The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was huge. Its walls stretched up so high that they seemed to touch the stars themselves. Thousands of different aliens sat in rows that went around in circles. Each alien looked different from the others. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others looked like giant insects with wings that sparkled. Some were made of what looked like living metal that moved and changed shape. Elena Vasquez sat in a small section, marked for observers. She was the only human in the entire hall. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a plain blue uniform with Earth's symbol on it. In her hands, she held a small notebook where she wrote down everything she saw and heard. The aliens in the hall were angry, very angry. They had been meeting for 3 days straight, and their voices got louder each hour. Lena could not understand all their languages, but she could see their body language. The way they moved their arms, how they tilted their heads, the colors their skin changed to when they were upset. She wrote it all down. "This war must end," shouted Ambassador Crix from the Centauri Empire. He was tall and thin, with silver skin, that glowed when he spoke. His people were known throughout the galaxy as great warriors. They valued honor above everything else. "The vegans have attacked our mining ships again. 67 of our people are dead. This cannot go on." From across the hall, a strange humming sound filled the air. It came from the vegan delegation. The vegans did not look like one person, but like many people who moved as one. There were 12 of them, but they spoke with one voice. When they talked, it sounded like a song. The Centauri speak of their dead, but what of ours? The vegans hummed together. 3 of our colony ships destroyed. 2,000 of our young ones lost forever. The Centauri started this war 15 years ago. They must pay. Alina watched as the other aliens in the hall began to take sides. Some banged their desks with their fists or claws or tentacles. Others made noises that sounded like screaming or crying or roaring. The noise grew so loud that Alina had to cover her ears. At the center of the hall stood the Council's most advanced computer system. It was called the Synthesis Collective. The machine looked like a giant crystal that changed colors as it thought. It could think faster than any living being. It knew every law, every treaty, every peace agreement that had ever been made in the galaxy. The crystal began to glow bright white. When it spoke, its voice was calm and perfect. Analysis complete. It said, "Peace proposal number 4847 has been calculated. The Centauri Empire and the Vegan Collective must divide the disputed asteroid fields into equal parts. Each side will mine different areas and share the profits according to population size." Ambassador Crick slammed his hand on his desk. Unacceptable. Those asteroids belong to Centauri space. Our ancestors died fighting for that territory 300 years ago. The vegans hummed louder, and their humming sounded angry. "The asteroids are in neutral space. No one owns them. The Centauri lie as always." Alina watched the Synthesis Collective's crystal turn red as it calculated again. "Proposal number 4848, it announced. "The asteroid fields will be controlled by the Galactic Council. Both sides will pay taxes to mine there." "No," shouted voices from both sides. This went on for hours. The great computer would suggest a solution. The Centauri would say no. The vegans would say no. Then the computer would think of another idea. Alina counted 43 different proposals that day. None of them worked. As the sun that lit this space station began to set, the aliens grew tired. But they were no closer to peace than when they started. Some aliens began to leave the hall. Others put their heads down on their desks and closed their eyes. Alina kept watching and writing. She noticed something that the great computer did not seem to see. When Ambassador Crix talked about the dead Centauri miners, his silver skin became darker. When the vegans hummed about their lost colony ships, their humming became sadder and slower. Both sides were not just angry, they were hurt. They were in pain. The head of the Galactic Council was an alien called Arbiter Zethkri. Looked like Ethkri. A tree made of blue crystal, and he was very old. He had been trying to make peace in the galaxy for over 200 years. Lena could see that he was frustrated too. "This meeting is ended for today," Arbiter Zethkri announced. His voice sounded tired. "We will meet again tomorrow. Perhaps the night will bring new wisdom. As the aliens began to leave, Alina heard some of them talking. A group of beings that looked like giant birds were speaking to each other in voices. That sounded like music, that humans want to help, one of them sang. They sent a message to the council yesterday. Another bird alien made a sound like laughter. Humans, as primitive little creatures? What could they possibly do that the Synthesis Collective cannot? Alina felt her face get hot with embarrassment and anger. She knew that most aliens thought. Humans were not very smart. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, compared to species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans were like babies. But as Alina packed up her notebook and got ready to leave, she kept thinking about what she had seen. The great computer was very smart. It could think of thousands of solutions in seconds. But it only thought about facts and numbers and laws. It did not think about feelings. Alina had studied alien psychology for 10 years. She knew that all intelligent beings had emotions, even if they showed them differently than humans did. The Centauri showed their feelings through the color of their skin. Vegans showed theirs through the tone of their humming. The computer could not see these things. As Alina walked through the empty halls of the space station toward her small room, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would do something that would shock the entire galaxy. She would ask to speak to the council. She would volunteer humanity to try to end this war. She knew that most aliens would laugh at her. She knew that even other humans might think she was crazy. But Alina had an idea. It was not based on laws or numbers or computer calculations. It was based on something much simpler and much more powerful. It was based on understanding that sometimes the smartest species in the galaxy still needed to learn how to heal a broken heart. 3 months had passed since Alina first watched the council fail to make peace. In those 3 months, the war had gotten much worse. Every day brought news of more death and destruction. Centauri warships attacked vegan colonies, vegan hive fleets, destroyed Centauri mining stations. The fighting had spread to 12 different star systems. Alina sat in her small office on the council space station. The walls were covered with pictures and notes about different alien species. She had been studying the war reports and watching recordings of the peace meetings. Her desk was messy with papers written in many different alien languages. On her computer screen, she could see the latest numbers. The war had now killed over 2 billion beings. Entire planets had been evacuated. Some worlds had been bombed so badly that nothing could live there anymore. The economic cost was enormous. Trade between star systems had almost stopped because cargo ships were afraid to travel. Alina rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept well in weeks. Every night she dreamed about the faces of the dead she had seen in the news reports. Centauri. Children who would never grow up. Vegan collective minds that had been broken apart forever. The weight of all that death made her chest feel heavy. A soft chime came from her door. "Come in," Alina said. The door slid open, and Captain Sarah Chen walked in. Sarah was Alina's friend and the head of the human delegation to the council. She was older than Alina, with gray hair and kind eyes, but today she looked worried. "Alina, we need to talk," Sarah said. She sat down in the chair across from Alina's desk. "I just came from an emergency meeting with Arbiter Zethgri. The situation is getting very bad." Alina leaned back in her chair. "How bad?" Sarah took a deep breath. "The Centauri Empire is building something called a Star Crusher. It's a weapon that can destroy an entire solar system. The vegans have responded by creating what they call a swarm fleet. It's made up of 10,000 ships that can move together like one giant organism." Alina felt sick to her stomach. If they use those weapons, ... the whole galaxy could be destroyed, Sarah finished. The council is desperate. Arbiter Zethgri is going to make an announcement today. He's going to ask for volunteers. Any species that thinks they can end this war will be given complete access to both sides. Alina's heart began to beat faster. This was the chance she had been waiting for. "What do you think will happen?" Sarah shook her head. "Smart species won't volunteer. The Andromedans, the Crystal Collective, the Mind Weavers, they're all too proud. They think if the Synthesis Collective can't solve this, then no one Can the less advanced species don't have the resources or knowledge to help? Alina stood up from her chair and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying in a war that had gone on for too long. What if humanity volunteered? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. Alina, be realistic. We've only been in space for 100 years. Most of the aliens here still think we're barely intelligent. The Andromedans call us the emotional primitives. The Crystal Collective won't even talk to us directly. Maybe that's exactly why we could help, Alina said. She turned around to face her friend. Sarah, I've been studying this war for months. I've watched every peace meeting. I've read every proposal. The problem isn't that the solutions are wrong. The problem is that no one is addressing the real issue. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Alina walked back to her desk and picked up a thick folder. Look at this. The Synthesis Collective has suggested 4,892 different peace plans. Some of them are actually very good. It's fair division of resources, shared mining rights, neutral zone patrols, economic partnerships. But every single plan treats this like a business disagreement. She opened the folder and pulled out several papers. But that's not what this is. This war started when a Centauri ship accidentally destroyed a vegan nursery colony. The Centauri. Captain was trying to clear an asteroid field and didn't know the vegans were there. 7,000 vegan younglings died. Sarah nodded. Yes, I remember reading about that. The vegans were devastated, Alina continued. In their culture, the death of younglings is the worst tragedy possible, so they retaliated. They attacked. A Centauri family ship, not a military vessel. A family ship carrying 3 generations of one family line. Everyone on board died. Alina put the papers down and looked at Sarah. The Centauri felt they had to respond to protect their honor, so they hit a vegan colony ship. Vegans struck back at a Centauri research station. Back and forth, each side trying to balance the pain. Sarah was quiet, thinking about what Alina had said. So you think this is really about grief? I think this is about 2 species that are in so much pain that they can't think clearly anymore, Alina said. Every attack makes them hurt more. Every death makes them angrier. They're stuck in a cycle where they keep trying to make the other side feel as bad as they do. Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Even if you're right, Alina, what could we do about it? Can't bring back the dead. Alina felt her heart racing. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, but she had never said it out loud before. We could help them grieve together instead of alone. Sarah turned around quickly. What? Think about it, Alina said. Human cultures have been dealing with grief and loss for thousands of years. We know how to mourn. We know how to forgive. We know how to heal from terrible pain. Maybe the advanced species are too logical to understand emotions, but humans live with emotions every day. Sarah shook her head. Alina, that's a beautiful idea, but you're talking about species that have been killing each other for 15 years. They hate each other, do they? Alina asked. Or are they just hurt and scared and don't know how to stop? Before Sarah could answer, a loud alarm began to sound throughout the space station. A voice came over the speakers in the common galactic language. All council members report to the main hall immediately. Emergency session beginning now. Alina and Sarah looked at each other. They both knew what this meant. The situation had gotten even worse. As they hurried through the corridors toward the main hall, Alina made up her mind. Today she was going to do something that would either save the galaxy or make humanity look foolish in front of everyone. She was going to volunteer to end the war. Sarah seemed to read her thoughts. Alina, if you do this and it goes wrong, it won't just be your career that's over. It could hurt humanity standing in the galaxy for decades. Alina stopped walking and looked at her friend. Sarah, if I don't try this and the war continues, there might not be a galaxy left to worry about. They reached the doors to the main hall. Alina could hear the angry voices of thousands of aliens inside. She took a deep breath and put her hand on the door control. Besides, she said with a small smile, someone once told me that humans are good at doing impossible things. The doors opened, and Alina walked into the chaos that would change everything. The main hall was louder than Alina had ever heard it. Thousands of aliens were talking, shouting, and making noises she could not understand. The air felt thick with fear and anger. Alina and Sarah found seats in the human section and tried to figure out what was happening. Arbiter Zethkri stood at the center of the hall. His blue crystal body was flashing with red lights, which Alina knew meant he was very upset. He raised his arms, and slowly the noise began to die down. Council. Members, Zethkri said in a voice that echoed through the huge room. We have received terrible news. A Centauri Starcrusher weapon has been completed. It will be ready to use in 7 days. The vegan swarm fleet has begun moving toward Centauri space. They will arrive in 10 days. The hall exploded with noise. Again, Alina saw aliens jumping up from their seats. Some were waving their arms or tentacles or wings. Others were changing colors rapidly, which was how many species showed fear. Silence, Zethkri shouted. The lights in the hall dimmed and brightened 3 times, which was the signal for emergency quiet. Slowly, the alien sat back down. Synthesis Collective has run new calculations, Zethkri continued. If these weapons are used, the destruction will spread beyond the 2 warring species. The shockwaves from a destroyed star system could damage planets light years away. The electromagnetic pulse from the swarm fleet could disrupt space travel across half the galaxy. Alina felt her mouth go dry. This was worse than she had imagined. Therefore, Zethkri said, the Council makes this desperate plea. Any species that believes they can end this war must step forward now. We will give you complete access to both Centauri and vegan leadership. You will have full diplomatic immunity and all the resources the Council can provide. This is our last hope for peace. The hall became very quiet. Alina could hear her own heartbeat. She looked around and saw thousands of alien faces looking at each other, waiting for someone to volunteer. Minutes passed. No one moved. Finally, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms stood up. Alina recognized him as Ambassador Desis from the Andromedan Federation. The Andromedans were known as one of the smartest species in the galaxy. They had technology that seemed like magic to most other races. Honored Arbiter Ambassador, Desis said in a voice that sounded like music, the Andromedan Federation has considered this matter carefully. Our analysis shows that if the Synthesis Collective cannot find a solution, then no solution exists. We must accept that some conflicts cannot be resolved peacefully. Alina felt her heart sink. If the Andromedans would not try, then who would? Another alien stood up. This one looked like a living crystal that sparkled with internal light. It was from the Crystal Collective, another very advanced species. The Crystal Collective agrees with our Andromedan colleagues, the being said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. We have run our own calculations. The probability of success for any mediation attempt is less than 0.3%. We cannot waste resources on an impossible task. More aliens began to speak. Mindweaver said the task was beyond their psychic abilities. The Time-Touched claimed they had already seen all possible futures and none led to peace. Species after species gave reasons why they could not or would not help. Alina watched. Arbiter Zethkri's crystal body grow dimmer as each species refused. She could see his hope dying. Soon there would be no one left to ask. Alina's hands began to shake. This was the moment she had been preparing for. But now that it was here, she felt terrified. What if she was wrong? What if her idea was stupid? What if she made everything worse? She looked at Sarah, who was staring at her with wide eyes. Sarah shook her head slightly, as if to say, don't do it. But Alina thought about the news reports she had seen that morning. A Centauri hospital ship had been destroyed by accident. 300 patients and medical workers were dead. A vegan farming collective had been wiped out by a Centauri missile. That was supposed to hit a military base. 800 families gone forever. Alina stood up. The hall became very quiet very quickly. Thousands of alien eyes turned to look at the small human woman in the blue uniform. Alina could hear her own breathing. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay standing. Honored Arbiter, Alina said. Her voice sounded tiny in the huge hall. The human delegation requests permission to attempt mediation. For a moment, no one made any sound at all. Then the noise began. It started as a low murmur, but quickly grew into something that sounded like laughter. If laughter could come from 1,000 different types of throats, Ambassador Theseus from Andromeda stood up again. With respect to our human colleagues, he said, but his tone did not sound respectful at all. This is not a time for jokes. Humanity has been part of this council for only 50 years. Your species still fights wars among yourselves on your home planet. What could you possibly offer that the greatest minds in the galaxy cannot provide? The laughter grew louder. Lena saw aliens pointing at her with claws and tentacles. Some were making gestures that she was sure were not polite in their cultures, but Alina stayed standing. She had expected this reaction. A new voice cut through the laughter. It was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. Alina turned and saw Ambassador Crix from the Centauri Empire standing up. His silver skin was dark with anger. "This is an insult," Crix shouted. "The humans think they can solve what we cannot solve ourselves. They are primitives who barely understand their own emotions, let alone ours. We will not be mediated by creatures who still use chemical rockets to reach orbit." Now the vegan delegation began to hum, but it was not their usual song-like sound. This humming was sharp and unpleasant. Alina knew it meant they were very upset. The Centauri speak truth for once. The vegans hummed together. Humans are individual thinkers. They cannot understand collective consciousness. They cannot comprehend the depth of our loss. This proposal is meaningless noise. Lena felt her face get hot with embarrassment and anger. She wanted to sit down and hide. But then she remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was a little girl. Alina, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is keep standing when everyone else wants you to fall down. Alina cleared her throat and spoke louder. I understand that you find this amusing or insulting. But I ask you to consider something. Every species that has refused to help today has given the same reason. You all say this problem is too complex, too emotional, too difficult for logic to solve. The laughter began to die down as aliens realized she was still talking. But maybe, Alina continued, that's exactly why we should try. Humans are not the smartest species here. We are not the most advanced. But we are experts at one thing that everyone else seems to think is unimportant. She paused and looked around the hall. We are experts at being emotional. The hall became quiet again. Alina could see aliens looking at each other with confusion. This war is not about asteroids, or territory or resources, Alina said. It is about pain. It is about grief. It is about two species that are hurting so badly that they cannot think of anything except making the hurt stop. The Synthesis Collective cannot solve this because computers do not understand heartbreak. Arbiter Zethkri was looking at Alina. With what might have been interest, his crystal body had stopped flashing red. Humans have been dealing with grief and loss and forgiveness for our entire history, Alina said. We know how to help people heal from terrible pain. We know how to turn enemies into friends. We know how to find hope in the darkest places. Alina took a deep breath. Give us a chance. If we fail, you will have lost nothing except a few days. But if we succeed, we might save billions of lives. The hall was completely silent now. Alina could feel her heart pounding so hard that she was sure everyone could hear it. Finally, Arbiter Zethkri spoke. Dr. Vasquez, he said slowly, are you truly volunteering humanity to end a war that has defeated our greatest minds? Alina straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the ancient being. Yes, honored Arbiter. I am. The crystal being was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that would change the course of galactic history. Request approved. May whatever gods you believe in help us all. Alina had 3 days to prepare before meeting with the warring species. 3 days to figure out how to end a 15-year war that had killed billions. She spent those days reading everything she could find about Centauri and vegan cultures, but not the things most diplomats would read. She did not study their laws or their economics or their military tactics. Instead, Alina read their poetry. She listened to their music. She watched recordings of their children playing, their funeral ceremonies and their wedding traditions. She wanted to understand not how they thought, but how they felt. On the morning of the 4th day, Alina traveled to the Centauri Empire's capital ship. It was a massive vessel called the Honor's Edge, floating in space near the Council Station. As her small shuttle approached the ship, Alina could see the battle scars on its hull, burn marks from energy weapons, holes that had been patched with metal plates. This ship had been fighting for a long time. The shuttle docked, and Alina was met by 4 Centauri warriors. They were all tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. They wore armor that looked like it was made from polished metal scales. Alina noticed that their skin was darker than usual, which meant they were angry or sad. Human, one of the warriors said. His voice was cold and formal. I am Commander Vexstar. I will escort you to Ambassador Crix. Follow me and speak only. When spoken to, Lena followed the warriors through corridors that felt more like a temple than a spaceship. The walls were covered with carved symbols and pictures of great battles. She saw statues of Centauri heroes and memorials to the dead. Everything was beautiful but sad. They stopped outside a large door decorated with silver and gold. Commander. Vexstar turned to Alina. The ambassador is inside. Remember, human? You were here because the council forced us to meet with you. Do not expect welcome. The door opened, and Alina walked into a room that took her breath away. The walls were made of transparent metal, giving a view of the stars outside. In the center of the room sat Ambassador Crix behind a desk made from what looked like a single piece of black stone. But Alina's attention was drawn to something else. The walls of the room were covered with photographs, hundreds of them, showing Centauri faces, men, women, children, elderly beings. All of them looked peaceful, as if they were sleeping. Those are the dead, Ambassador, Crix said, without looking up from his papers. Every Centauri killed in this war. I look at their faces every day to remember why we fight. Alina walked closer to the wall of photographs. She saw children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their families again. The weight of all that loss made her chest feel tight. I am sorry for your losses, Alina said quietly. Crix's skin flashed bright silver with surprise. You are sorry? You do not even know these people. They mean nothing to you. Alina turned to face him. Every death means something. Every life that ends too soon is a tragedy. It does not matter if I knew them personally. Crix stood up from his desk, was much taller than Alina, and his skin was getting darker with anger. Do not pretend to understand our pain, human. Your species has never suffered as we have suffered, Alina. Thought about all the wars and disasters in human history, all the people who had died before their time. Ambassador, my species has been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know what loss feels like. We know what it means to carry the weight of the dead. She walked to another wall of photographs. But I noticed something interesting about these pictures. They are all peaceful. In human cultures, when we remember the dead, we sometimes show them as they died, especially if they died in battle. But all of these people look like they are sleeping. Crix's skin began to change from dark gray to a lighter silver. In Centauri tradition, we believe the dead should be remembered as they lived, not as they died. We honor their peace, not their pain. Alina nodded. That is beautiful. It shows that even in war, you have not forgotten how to love. For the first time since Alina had met him, Ambassador Crix was quiet. He sat back down at his desk and looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. Human? What do you think you can accomplish that our greatest minds cannot? Alina sat down in the chair across from his desk. I want to ask you a question, Ambassador. What started this war? Crix's skin darkened again. The vegans destroyed our mining station at Kepler 442. 67 good Centauri died. Happened before that? Lena asked gently. Crix was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice so soft Alina could barely hear him. Captain Zethmori was clearing asteroids from a mining site. His sensors showed no life signs. He did not know the vegans were there. When he destroyed the asteroid, it contained a vegan nursery ship. 7,000 younglings died. Lena could see pain in Crix's silver eyes. Captain Zethmori was a good man. He would never have hurt children on purpose. When he realized what had happened, he could not live with the guilt. He took his own life. So the first death in this war was not a vegan, Elena said. It was a centauri who died from grief. Crix looked up at her sharply. How do you know this? This information is classified. Because I understand guilt, Elena said. I understand what it feels like to accidentally hurt someone you never meant to harm. Captain Zethmori died because he could not forgive himself for a terrible accident. Elena leaned forward in her chair. Ambassador, what if I told you that the vegans have been in pain about this accident every day for 15 years? What if I told you that they have never stopped mourning their lost children? Crix's skin began to change colors rapidly, which Elena knew meant he was confused. That is impossible. They attacked us. They showed no mercy. They attacked because they were hurt and angry and did not know what else to do, Elena said. Just like you attacked them back for the same reasons. Elena stood up and walked to the wall of photographs again. You honor your dead by remembering their peace. The vegans honor their dead by sharing their pain. Both of your species are grieving, but you are doing it in different ways. You think their way is wrong, and they think your way is wrong. But really, you are both just trying to heal from the same terrible wound. Ambassador Crix was very quiet. Elena could see his skin shifting through different shades of silver as he thought about what she had said. Even if what you say is true, he finally said, how can we stop? Too much blood has been spilled. Too many lives have been lost. How can we forgive when the dead cry out for justice? Elena walked back to his desk and placed her hand gently on the black stone surface. Ambassador, what if the dead are not crying for justice? What if they are crying for peace? What if they want their deaths to mean something more than just another reason to keep fighting? Crix looked up at the photographs on his walls. Elena could see tears forming in his silver eyes. I have a proposal, Elena said. Something that has never been tried before, but I need to visit the vegans first. I need to understand their pain as well as yours. Crix wiped his eyes and looked at Elena with something that might have been hope. What kind of proposal? Elena smiled sadly. One that honors all the dead instead of using them as weapons against the living. 2 hours later, Elena was on another shuttle, traveling to meet with the vegan collective. As she watched the stars pass by outside her window, she thought about the pain she had seen in Ambassador Crix's eyes. It was the same pain she saw in the mirror sometimes when she thought about people she had lost. The hardest part was not that. The Centaurian vegans were enemies. The hardest part was that they were so much alike in their suffering. She had to help them see that truth for themselves. The vegan collective ship was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was not built like a normal spaceship with straight lines and hard angles. Instead, it looked like it was alive. The hull moved and shifted like breathing. Soft lights flowed across its surface in patterns that reminded Elena of ocean waves. As her shuttle docked, Elena could hear something strange. It's music. It was coming from inside the ship itself. Not played by instruments, but created by the voices of thousands of vegans all humming together. The sound was beautiful, but also very sad. Elena was met by 12 vegans who moved as one group. They all looked similar, with pale green skin and large dark eyes that seemed to reflect the light. When they spoke, their voices blended together into one voice that sounded like a choir. Human Elena. They sang together, We greet you with the voice of 7 million minds. We are the grief singers of the collective. We will guide you to the deep memory chamber. Elena followed them through corridors that pulsed with soft light. The walls were not made of metal or stone, but something that felt warm to the touch. As they walked, Elena could hear the humming growing stronger. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Sound you hear, the grief singers explained, is the song of sorrow. We have been singing it for 15 years, for months and 6 days. One voice for each youngling who died in the great tragedy. Elena felt tears come to her eyes. The vegans had been mourning continuously for over 15 years. She could not imagine carrying that much sadness for so long. They stopped in front of a door that seemed to be made of living wood. It opened without anyone touching it, and Elena stepped into a room that made her gasp. The chamber was huge, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. But what took Elena's breath away was what filled the space. Floating in the air were thousands of small lights, each one pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The humming was loudest here, coming from the lights themselves. Each light represents one of our lost younglings, the grief singers said. Their memories live on in our collective consciousness. We feel their presence every moment of every day. Lena walked among the floating lights. She moved. Some of them drifted closer to her, as if curious about the human visitor. She could feel warmth coming from them, and somehow she could sense emotions, joy from a youngling who loved to play games, wonder from another who dreamed of exploring distant stars. All of them cut short by one terrible accident. "This is beautiful," Alina whispered, "and heartbreaking." The grief singers moved closer to her. "You understand pain, human Alina. We can feel it in your mind song. You have lost someone important to you." Alina nodded, thinking of her grandfather, who had died when she was young. Everyone has lost someone they loved. It is part of being alive, but these were not natural deaths, the grief singers said, and their harmonious voice became sharp with anger. "Our children were murdered by Centauri carelessness. They must pay for this crime." Alina turned to face them. "Do you know what happened to the Centauri captain who caused the accident?" The grief singers were quiet for a moment. Then they said he died in the destruction of the mining station. "Good. He deserved to suffer as we have suffered." "He died before your attack," Alina said gently. "Captain Zethmori took his own life 3 hours after he realized what he had done. He could not live with the knowledge that he had killed children." The 12 vegans stopped moving as one. Alina could feel their surprise through the strange mental connection she was beginning to sense. That is not possible," they said, but their voice was uncertain now. "The report said he died in our retaliation strike." Alina shook her head. "He died from grief. The same grief you have been carrying for 15 years. He was so sorry for what he had done that he chose death rather than continue living with the pain." Alina walked to the center of the floating lights. The first person to die in this war was not a vegan youngling. It was a Centauri adult who died from a broken heart. The humming in the chamber began to change, became softer, more confused. Alina could feel the collective consciousness processing this new information. "If this is true," the grief singer said slowly, "then why did the Centauri continue to fight? Why did they not tell us of their captain's remorse?" "Because they were angry that you attacked them," Alina explained. "They thought you were being cruel by killing their people after their captain had already punished himself. They did not understand that you were just in pain." Alina looked up at the floating lights above her. "Both of your species have been grieving the same tragedy for 15 years. You have been fighting each other when you should have been helping each other heal." The grief singers were very quiet. Alina could feel thousands of minds in the collective thinking about what she had said. "What do you propose, human Alina?" they finally asked. Alina took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "I propose that both species stop fighting each other and start fighting the real enemy." "What enemy?" the grief singers asked. "The grief that has been poisoning both your peoples," Alina said. "I propose a joint memorial ceremony. Centauri and vegans together, honoring all the dead from both sides, not as enemies, but as fellow mourners." The humming stopped completely. The chamber became silent for the first time in 15 years. "You want us to mourn with the Centauri?" the grief singers asked in disbelief. "I want you to heal with them," Alina said. "Your younglings died in an accident. The Centauri captain died from guilt about that accident. Everyone who has died since then has died because 2 species were too proud and too hurt to talk to each other." Alina walked closer to the grief singers. "What if instead of using your dead as reasons to keep fighting, you use them as reasons to make peace? What if their deaths could prevent future deaths instead of causing them?" One of the floating lights drifted down and hovered near Elena's shoulder. She could feel a sense of curiosity from it, as if the youngling's memory was interested in her. "Words. The Centauri have a tradition," Alina continued. "They remember their dead at peace, not in pain. You have a tradition of keeping the memories of your younglings alive through song. What if you combined these traditions? What if you created something beautiful together, instead of destroying each other?" The 12 vegans looked at each other. Having a silent conversation through their mental link, Alina waited, watching the lights pulse gently around her. Finally, the grief singers spoke. "Human Alina, if we agree to this ceremony, What guarantee do we have that the Centauri will not use it as an opportunity to attack us? Alina smiled. The same guarantee you would give them? Your word of honor as beings who love their children? 3 days later, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. In the neutral space between the warring fleets, a small space station was built by volunteer workers from a dozen different species. The station had one large room with walls made of transparent metal, giving a view of the stars in all directions. On one side of the room, the Centauri placed photographs of every person they had lost in the war. On the other side, the vegans created a display of floating lights representing their dead younglings. In the center, they placed a simple memorial stone with words written in both languages: to all who died from grief, accident, and war. Your deaths will have meaning through our peace. Alina stood between Ambassador Crix and the grief singers as representatives from both species filled the station. For the first time in 15 years, Centaurian vegans were in the same room without weapons. The ceremony began with silence. Then slowly, the vegans began to hum the Song of Sorrow. After a few moments, the Centauri joined in with their own memorial chant. The two songs were different, but somehow they fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Alina watched as silver tears rolled down Centauri faces and vegan lights pulsed in rhythm with their grief. She saw enemies looking at each other's memorials and realizing that everyone had lost someone they loved. When the ceremony ended, Ambassador Crix approached the lead grief singer. Alina held her breath, not knowing what would happen. "I am sorry for your younglings," Crix said simply. "They did not deserve to die." "I am sorry for your captain," the grief singer replied. "He did not deserve to carry such guilt alone." The war ended that day, not with treaties or negotiations, but with two species finally understanding that they had been fighting the wrong enemy all along. 6 months later, Alina stood in the same council hall where she had first volunteered humanity for an impossible task. But now she was not alone. Beside her stood representatives from the Center of Vegan Peace Alliance, a new organization dedicated to helping other species resolve conflicts through emotional healing rather than military force. The council had created a new position, just for Alina, emotional arbiter. Her job was to help species understand not just what they were fighting about, but why they were really fighting. As Alina looked out at the assembled aliens, many of whom had once laughed at her proposal, she thought about what her grandmother had told her years ago. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is keep standing when everyone else wants you to fall down. Alina had done more than keep standing. She had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most advanced solution was also the most simple one, the courage to feel pain together instead of alone.